Welcome to the second part of my Fixing Your Club series on Bath Rugby. So sorry about the slow follow-up to part 1, but it's been a very busy week and it has given me time to take a look at your comments across YouTube and TikTok to understand what additions the fans would like to see based off of the statistical evidence presented in the first part. If you haven't already seen that episode, make sure you watch it before I go into detail here, as it might explain a lot of the underlying numbers that we've seen carry Bath to where they sit in the league at present, and what changes they may want to make to ensure that they remain as consistent title challengers across the domestic and continental scene. So I'm going to suggest 4 people to join this setup based off of those indications mentioned previously. The important piece here is to keep these suggestions relatively cost effective, as Bath's wage bill has swelled up to being one of the highest in the league, and competitive with budgets we see elsewhere in Europe. And the position which I'm going to start with is hooker, which seems to be like a unanimous gap in the squad that fans want to see supported. A lot of those comments have pointed towards Bath's hooker situation being a little bit shaky, with Dunn and Annett being the current rotation options, with young Kepu Tuipulotu coming through. The 2 hookers have put up a fair chunk of minutes this season, with Dunn clocking in at 1,110 minutes across 15 starts and 21 appearances, and Annett putting up just shy of 700 minutes in 8 starts and 20 appearances. What's immediately obvious is the form table drops off a cliff when Annett cameos. Obviously, it's incredibly unfair to leverage that on one player, but it is unusual that Bath have lost their last 5 games when he's put up 25 minutes or more. When we reconsider what we mentioned in the first video about Bath being about 5% off in many games and struggling to close out tightly balanced games, I think he's an example of an upgrade in finishing that this side urgently need. He's also 33 years old and very unlikely to put up that amount of minutes this season. And then as for Dunn, he's always been a nearly man for England, threatening to be used at international level, but not quite able to keep the consistent form required to break up that pretty concrete set of hookers that are now above him. And at 31 years old, he's unlikely to break that mould now. But for the Bath faithful, he's been a stalwart of a player who on his day still can put in numbers that are some of the finest in England. He's tough, he's physical, he's a little more traditional than the new wave of centre-converted hookers that we're seeing across the league, and there's a lot to be said for that. However, Bath's line-out is about the 6th/7th best in the league, sitting at 86% success rate, which I already mentioned is a few percentiles off where you would want to see a top 4 side be. I also just look at the quality of hooker across the league and I don't think it's ever been higher, and that's my issue. Would I swap the likes of Thacker, Dan, Luke Cowan-Dickey, Montoya, maybe even Dan Frost for Dunn? Well, this season I probably would. And for a side trying to really compete at the highest level, they have to go player for player with the best sides out there. So what would I be looking for? Well, ideally, a player to sit on the bench just above Annett, probably around the 26-27-year-old mark, who can consistently be used in big games, and to look at taking that starting spot by round 12 or so next season. There are a couple of options I was interested in, one being Jose Luis Gonzalez, who plays for Béziers in the Pro D2. Béziers have been excellent this season, and kind of the surprise package who have a very realistic opportunity to see promotion into France's Premier League. Gonzalez is a 26-year-old 108 kg hooker who has featured 10 times across the season and started in 3 games. He's only put up about 370 minutes, which would be my concern at his age, and although I like his aggressive carrying and work in the loose, I just think he's a little too lightweight for what I'm looking for. We also just don't have a consistent enough data pool to know whether he's actually going to improve that set piece. There was also another Argentinian stroke Italian player that I was very interested in, with Batista Bernasconi from Benetton being a real breakthrough prospect this season. At just 22 years old, the 114 kg hooker has put up 16 appearances and 4 starts across a very crowded season. If we are talking about an impact sub, Benetton have lost just 3 games from the 16 he's appeared in this season, and just 1 in his last 10 cameos. He's put up 510 minutes, which is very similar to Annett, and I think he's got buckets of potential and isn't far away from featuring in some international squads. He came through the Argentina under-20 setup and played 4 times for Argentina's second team. He's also a bit of a fridge of a man, standing at 5'9" and weighing 114 kegs. But my concern here is Benetton's scrum and line-out isn't that great anyway, which is a big contributing factor as to why they concede 6 penalties for every penalty they win. He's probably a season off being transferred right now, and I could see him having a long-term future at pretty much any Premiership side. So the player that I decided to settle on is a young Georgian hooker by Vano Kadze, who is currently playing for this languishing Montpellier side this season. Montpellier have been absolutely awful, and they are very likely to hemorrhage players before the window opens at the end of the season. And Vano should be a player a lot of people have their eye on. The reason why I've prioritised him is the sheer amount of game time that he's had in Europe's most brutal and taxing league, as he put up 644 minutes in the 21-22 season as a 20-21-year-old, 545 minutes as a 22-year-old, and a huge 1,104 minutes this season as a 23-year-old. He's already starting for Georgia, having had a fantastic championship-winning campaign in the Rugby Europe competition, and I just think he has buckets of potential. He's also another fridge of a player with wide shoulders and no neck, and I liken his physicality to someone like Dunn. Route 1, hard, strong, and very combative in the carry. He does need to sort out his discipline though, as he has received 3 yellow cards in the last 2 seasons, but then I can't say Dunn is that much better there. I really want to start seeing this massive array of Georgian talent start leaking into the English league, as the French currently have a supply line of top players that we aren't touching, and I think Vano could absolutely bolster what is already a great scrum for Bath and turn it into a weapon, and hopefully he can also shore up those line-out issues. Despite Montpellier's reputation, I also don't foresee him being very expensive, as a second choice hooker for a side facing relegation at a young age is unlikely to be demanding much in wages. Fullback was another position that fans were asking to see covered, with Matt Gallagher leaving to Benetton next season, and it absolutely makes sense as for why, as he's put up 1,300 minutes across the Champions Cup and Premiership, and is still by far the first choice for this side. Bath do have capable backups here, with Tom de Glanville putting up nearly 1,000 minutes himself this season, and boasting a great try-scoring record, scoring on average 0.8 tries per game, which is basically a try every 100 minutes of rugby, which is one of the best in the league. But despite that, it doesn't really feel like fans are content or confident in him taking up those starting minutes yet. Orlando Bailey has also put in some work there, but I think Bath would much prefer to keep him as a second specialist 10 in case of any injuries to Russell like we've seen most recently. So what are we looking for here? I think we are likely looking for an option with a good age profile to rival de Glanville for a starting spot. So we aren't specifically looking for a bench or rotation option, but somebody with real first team pedigree. My first option was Matt Worley, who has been tearing up trees for Bedford Blues in the Championship. Bedford have been one of the most exciting attacking sides in the league, and it's largely down to players such as Worley and their interest in creating scoring opportunities in the transition. Very similar to Bath. Worley is a really interesting profile, having moved to Hong Kong at 5 years old and now playing for the national side in Eastern competitions. He plays fullback and wing and is absolutely rapid. He also has a great age profile at 26 years old, having come through at Racing in France and then featuring twice as a junior with Northampton Saints. However, as a converted scrum half and just 80 kilos, I think he's too small for what Bath are looking for. And although Muir and Kokonasiga help balance that back three, I just think he would be targeted with bombs by kick-happy sides. I also like the idea of pinching Cameron Anderson from Harlequins, who currently plays second fiddle to Green. At just 24 years old, he's a really exciting prospect who came through at Wasps before their demise and has spent frequent loans at London Scottish. He unfortunately doesn't get an awful lot of game time for Quinns' first team, as is Green's consistent form and the ability to rotate those starting back three names. And I think the lure of potential first team rugby could be a really interesting sell. He's also 6'2" and 95 kilos, so much more my flavour, but I do worry that his style of play is so similar to the likes of de Glanville, as he himself is also a very good utility back, that the signing wouldn't really offer much of a dichotomy of game plan. He's probably better suited heading to somewhere like Sale, who themselves have a strong connection with London Scottish, and to replace Veanu when his deal runs out and challenge for that top spot. However, do you know who I'd be really brave and go for? Well, I'd go for Max Nagy from the Ospreys, who is currently pretty much their cemented first choice fullback. Born in Buckingham, it would be a tall ask to lure him over, as he's currently getting close to qualifying on residency to play for Wales. And having come through the system at Swansea, they would hate to see a player of his quality depart just as he's coming good. But boy, would he fit this Bath team well. At 24 years old, Max is 6'4" and weighs around 95 kilos and would wickedly complement Russell's diverse and strategic kicking game. The rangy runner has scored 3 tries from 8 starts this season, but has had a bit of a disciplinary issue in the last 2 rounds of the URC, catching flight of 2 yellow cards. He's put up 647 minutes so far this season, as he missed rounds 8 through 13 with injury, but honestly I think now would be the time to capitalise on a player like this. Ospreys can't compete with Bath's paying power, and the idea of being part of this Van Graan project and working with the best attacking coach in the country in Lee Blackett in a game plan that is there to emphasise the aerial ability of a tall back three player is just a little too much to pass over. Some fans wanted me to cover second row too, but with the recent signing of Maloney, I just think Bath are okay for the time being there, and would be best to bolster their ranks with an academy prospect to pick up Prem Cup minutes. So instead I'm going to throw in a backup centre for the side. As although the front three options for Bath are mouth-watering with some of the best combinations possible in the league, it might seem a little thin on paper. Lawrence has had injury issues and will be featuring more heavily on the international circuit, Redpath similarly, and Max Ajomo helps fill the void when one or the other falls to injury. Max Wright is in there, but it does feel increasingly unlikely that he's going to break up or challenge for a bench spot in this side. And the highly rated Will Butt is also a great depth option, but for his sake I would like to see him pushing for opportunities around the league to feature a little more regularly. I actually think he'd be a great option at Newcastle to break up that ageing centre combination. This one was a pretty easy one for me, as I already know the player I would want, and that is Alex McKenry. The Irish centre has bounced around from Munster to Wasps for a number of seasons, and then had even worse luck when he left there post-bust to join Jersey Regs, who then went under at the end of the season. However, since then he's been a constant presence for a really good Dax side in the Pro D2, putting up 853 minutes in the second half of this season as they really fight for a promotion slot. Dax have not been great at scoring points this season, but they've also not been shipping them either. McKenry is a big lad who has played 8 games at inside centre and 8 games at outside centre this season. And with his build at 6'2" and 100 kgs, it makes him a very versatile covering option. It was such a shame what happened at Wasps, as he was really beginning to threaten to break through into the league, having put up 274 minutes across 4 games up until the final round 10 before they went under. He has the ability to challenge the set of backs that they have there at the moment, and also would be a great monetizable asset for Bath, as the likes of Ulster, Connacht or even Munster will all likely come with their wallet ajar to pick up an Irish player who's currently in form. I did also want to put forward one final suggestion that actually wasn't put forth by Bath fans, and it's totally understandable as for why. Bath have 3 recognised scrum halves on their books at the moment, with Ben Spencer being the standout scrum half in the league this season. That's why he's absolutely eaten up minutes, with nearly 1,500 clocked across the course of 22 matches. Louis Schroeder has also deputised with the Journeyman 9 featuring in 21 games this season, but with more than half of those cameos being for less than 10 minutes, he doesn't seem like a standout option to stay here. Next in line beneath him is the young, exciting prospect Tom Carr-Smith, who has made 3 appearances in the Prem Rugby Cup, but has put up just 45 minutes of rugby in the Premiership competition. With Schroeder being 34 years old, maybe Bath just offer another short-term deal there to cover, but you'd like to see a little more confidence in the rotation of someone like Carr-Smith. So yes, I'd stick with Tom Carr-Smith slowly blooding in the background in cup games and bring in a realistic bench option to put up around 500 minutes next season, with a bit more trust and bravery put there. So I would like to put forward Rudy Dawson from Cornish Pirates. The Pirates have been fantastic this season as the best defensive side in the whole of England's rugby championship, and the proficient box kicking and decision making of Dawson has allowed them to keep such a positive points difference. He's featured 13 times this season, starting 8 and scoring 4 tries, so he is prone to a decent snipe. At 26 years old, he came through the system at Newcastle Falcons and has now spent 5 years at the Southwestern side. You may have already seen him play for the England Sevens team over at the Youth Commonwealth Games over in Samoa. So too his featuring for the Scotland under-20 system, in which he is qualified through his parents. Another player that if you do turn into an uncovered gem, Scottish regions might be forced to put down some bids in the future. Also at 6 foot and 83 kilos, he's not small for a scrum half, and absolutely physical enough to play rugby at the top level. So why not do something fun and get him involved? So there you have it, nearly 30 minutes of me babbling about how I would look to fix Bath into next season. So let me know what you thought in the comment section down below. If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure that you hit that subscribe button. And if you're watching this on TikTok, make sure you follow for more rugby content.